The technique of the Roman military contains its excellent system, the game plans made by the state to execute its political objective through a determination of military objectives, a procedure of discretion supported by danger of military activity, and the devotion to the military of part of its generation and assets. Operational methodology and on a little scale is military strategies for military engagement with a specific end goal to crush the adversary. Between the 8th and 6th centuries BC, the legions of early Rome were conscripted only as part-time soldiers and had their main occupation as farmers and herders. Between the 6th and 4th centuries BC, the Roman military system was inspired by its more advanced neighbor and enemy, the Etruscans. Those tactics were already adopted by the Greeks by 675 BC and reached the Italy-based Etruscans by early 7th century BC. In the 4th century BC, according to most literary evidences, the Roman army was now divided up into 3 separate battle lines, with first line comprising into young hastati in 10 maniples, each of 120 men, the second line comprising the hardened principals in 10 maniples, and the third and last line consisting of the veteran triarii in 10 maniples, who probably fought as heavy hoplites, but their maniples had only 16 men. Additionally, these battle lines were also possibly screened by the light-armed velites, who mostly belonged to the poorer class of Roman civilians. Between the 3rd and the 2nd BC, by this time, the citizen military or soldiers of Republican Rome were divided and then assembled in the capital on the day that was proclaimed by the consuls in their edictum. This process was known as dilectus, and interestingly, the men volunteers were arranged in terms of their similar height and age. This broad order lines in terms of physical appearance, by similar equipment if not uniform, made the organized soldiers look even more homogeneous. In the 1st century BC, the last phase of the Roman Republic was marked by yet another military overhaul, better known as the Marian reforms. Alluding to a far more influential course of action than the previous centuries of military organizations, these reforms resulted in the military inclusion of the capita censi, the landless Romans who were now assessed in the census and counted as potential recruits that could bolster the army. Consequently, the state was responsible for providing arms and equipment to these previously disfranchised masses, thus allowing many of the poorer men to be employed as professional soldiers of the burgeoning Roman realm. Between the 1st and 6th centuries AD, the initial length of service for a Roman soldier, Legionary, was increased to 20 years from 16 years, and it was complemented by the Primaria Militari, or discharge bonus, a lump sum that was increased to 12,000 sesterces, or 3,000 denarii, and by the middle of 1st century AD, the service was further extended to 25 years. Now, beyond official service lengths, the protocols were rarely followed in terms marked by wars. This resulted in retaining of the legionaries well beyond their service periods, with some men fighting under their legions for over 3 to 4 decades. Suffice it to say, such chaotic measures frequently resulted in...
Once the army had conveyed on an operation, they would for the most part walk to their target. There were special cases when the armed force were transported by the Roman naval force, however, and after it's all said and done, in many cases this was trailed by a walk of a few days or weeks. The way to deal with the combat zone was made in a few segments, improving move. Ordinarily, assault vanguards went before the fundamental body and included scouts, mounted force and light troops. A tribune or other official regularly went with the vanguard to review the landscape for conceivable camp areas. Flank and recon components were likewise sent to give the standard covering security. Behind the vanguard came the primary assemblage of substantial infantry. Every army walked as a particular arrangement and was joined by its own particular staff repair.
Auxiliary. By the 2nd century, the auxiliary contained the same number of infantry as the legions and in addition provided almost all of the Roman army's cavalry and more specialized troops, especially light cavalry and archers. The auxiliatas represented 3/5 of Rome's regular land forces at that time. Like their legionary counterparts, auxiliary recruits were mostly voluntaries, not conscripts. Legionary. The Roman legionary was a professional heavy infantryman of the Roman army after the Marian reforms. Legionaries had to be Roman citizens until the age of 45. They enlisted in a legion for 25 years of service, a change from the early practice of enlisting only for a campaign. The last 5 years were on veteran lighter duties. Consul. Elected official with military and civic duties, like a co-president. There were two, but also major military commander. Praetor. Appointed military commander of a legion or grouping of legions, also government official. Legatus legionis, the legate or overall legion commander, usually filled by a senator. Tribune, young officers second in command of the legion. Other lesser tribunes served as junior officers. Prefect, third in command of the legion. There were various types. The Prefectus Equatorius commanded a unit of cavalry. Primus Pilus, commanding centurion for the first cohort, the senior centurion of the entire legion. Centurion, basic commander of the century. Prestige varied based on the cohort they supervised. Decurio, commander of the cavalry units or turman. Aquilifier, standard bearer of each legion, a position of much prestige.
Signifer, one for each century, handled financial matters and decorations. Optio, equivalent to a sergeant, second in command for the centurion. Cornice, hornblower or signaler, imaginifier, carried standard bearing the emperor's image. Decanus, equivalent to a corporal, commanded 8-man tent party. Munifex, basic legionary, the lowest of the trained rank and file. Tyrones, never recruit to the legions, a novice.
Cohort. An accomplish was a standard strategic military unit of a Roman army and was made out of approximately 500 troopers. An associate is thought to be what might as well be called a cutting-edge military force. The partner supplanted the maniple following the changes credited to Gaius Marius in 107 BC. Until the center of the 3rd century AD, 10 occultists made up a Roman army. Initially, a partner comprised of 6 centuria, each taught by a centurion helped by junior officers. At different conditions before the changes, a centurion may have 60 to 100 men. The accomplished had no perpetual officer. It is expected that in battle, the most senior centurion of the 6 would have directed the whole campaign. Amid the changes in the 1st century AD, the charge structure and makeup of the Roman armies was formally set down, in a frame that would preserve for a considerable length of time. Standard centurion comprised of 80 men each. The primary partner was comprised of 5 twofold quality hundreds of years totaling 800 men. The centurion of his 1st century naturally being the most senior in the army. Legion. A Roman army was the essential military unit of the antiquated Roman armed force in the time of the late Roman Republic and the Roman Empire. It was generally comparable to the cutting-edge World Division. In the plural, the armies, it might mean the whole Roman armed force. An army was around 5,000 men in a few partners of overwhelming infantry. It was typically joined by connected units of assistants who were not Roman residents. They gave mounted force, run troops, and skirmishers to supplement the army's overwhelming infantry. The extent of a run-of-the-mill army fluctuated amid the historical backdrop of antiquated Rome. It had a supplement of 4,200 legionaries in the Republican time of Rome. In the royal time frame, The full supplement was 5,500 split into 10 accomplices of 408 men each. The primary accomplice was at twofold quality with 800 men. The staying 220 were 120 rangers in addition to specialized staff. Alea. An alea was the term used in the midst of the mid-Roman Republic between 338 and 88 BC to demonstrate the military course of action made out of Rome's Italy military accomplices. A conventional consular with the power in the midst of this period contained two armed forces, made out of Roman nationals just and two brought together alea. Alea were to some degree greater than normal armed forces, 5,400 and 4,500 men. Totally officers unit of the non-national auxiliary corps, C. Alea. Exactly when at a later date the Roman military were made generally out of Roman inhabitants and completely of Sogidi, accomplices from whatever is left of the Italian domain. Huge numbers of the Middle Republic will contain two multitudes of Roman locals and two multitudes of Alea, with the Alea giving 30 trumea of mounted power per armed forces. The accomplices, both steed and foot, and two divisions were perceived as dextera ala or right wing and sinistra ala or left wing.